up guys, you're watching Poot's Garage. This week, we're rebuilding the entire fuel system on this truck. Before we get too deep into this video, you know what we gotta do. We gotta get to the map. So if you're new here, what we do is you comment where you're watching from, and I'll put a red pin on the map. This week, we got 21 locations, so let's get to it. First up is Lima, Peru. Then Bloomer, Wisconsin. Franklin, Tennessee. Olympia, Washington. Mesquite, Nevada. Memphis, Tennessee. Red Deer, Alberta, Canada. Palmer, Alaska. South Orange County, California. Chattanooga, Tennessee. Phoenix, Arizona. Montreal, Canada. Frankfurt, Germany. El Reno, Oklahoma. San Luis, Arizona. The Dalles, Oregon. Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. Anchorage, Alaska. New York City. Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And last is Ellensburg, Washington. And that's all the pins for this week, so I really appreciate everybody commenting where they're watching from. So all you gotta do is just represent your city, your state, your county, your country, whatever you wanna say. And also, you guys got a long video ahead of you, so get comfortable, get something to drink, and sit back and enjoy. Please watch as much as you can to help me out, and like, comment, and subscribe. So last week we talked about how my fuel system failed. My FI Tech fuel command completely failed out on me, and I wanted to do just kind of a complete revamp of the whole fuel system. So now that's where we got the parts behind me. Now I've actually done a lot of work off camera here. I've been just kind of trying to get some stuff done and just the little nitty-gritty type stuff, some dirty work, different things like that. So let me show you what we got so far. So last week, I believe I tore out these two fuel tanks. We got those out of the truck. We're not reusing those. This week, I went ahead and removed all the other unneeded stuff. So I took out the old fuel command. That's going bye-bye. And I went through and just removed as much stuff out of here that we're not using. So that included the actual fuel line, the hard lines going to and from the old tank. These are some old return lines. Oh, those crossed over from left to right tank. These are the hoses and the two filters that were used for that fuel command to the FI Tech unit. We got both of the fuel fillers out. The mechanical fuel pump is out. All these nuts and bolts that came out with everything. This was a fuel line I made to go from the pump to the driver's side of the motor. And then this is the old fuel tank selector switch. And you can't forget the 15 feet of hose that I ran for a vent all the way back to the fuel tanks from fuel command. Don't forget the pile of dirt. Looking at underneath, yeah, obviously our tanks are gone because we took those out last week. But I kind of went through and took out as much stuff as I could that we're not using anymore, just to clean things up and make things a little more simple. So there was a lot of fuel lines running back and forth between the two tanks. There's the fuel selector valve up there, so we got that out of there. This side I went ahead and removed the actual hard fuel line that runs all the way up to the front. I kind of wanted to reuse it, but it is really old and rusty. Plus I didn't like where it terminates up at the front of the motor. I'm running everything towards the back of the motor now. I do have some wiring to figure out still. This has got gonna have my my fuel level sender and all that stuff's gonna be in here, so I gotta figure out how I'm gonna wire that up to the new tank. And then hopefully I can clean up some of that wiring too. I also wanted to remove that hard fuel line because it actually ran on the outside of my frame rail out here, and it was actually gonna be in the way of when I put my extended shock mounts in there. Under hood, we took the fuel command out that was mounted here, took that out, took its brackets out. I still got the wiring down there, obviously I got to strip that out. I had a hard line that ran from here down to the fuel pump down there, so I took that piece off. Our mechanical fuel pump is gone now. I still have a plate that blocked that off. And that old fuel line ran right across the top of the rail here on the outside. So it was pretty close to the headers, so it was probably picking up a lot of heat, so that's never good. So now when we run our new lines, we're gonna come directly off, because I have to run a return line too. We're gonna come off the back of the throttle body. I'm gonna probably run up to the firewall here, see if I can't mount my fuel filter up here maybe. And then we'll probably run straight down and then try and follow the outside of the frame rail all the way back. The other thing I did to get ready for this project is I cleaned out the bed of this truck. I must have removed about 200 or more pounds, probably more than that. It was several hundred pounds of just junk that I had stored in here. I was kind of using it as like where I would throw all my old parts to kind of keep them around in case I needed something off of them. I think this thing sits about an inch higher in the back now. You can see how bad a shape this bed floor is, see how wavy it is. This thing has been so hammered on. It's got holes in there from an old like gooseneck or something. I mean, this bed is in such bad shape. Look at the rust on the front of this thing. That's pretty nasty. So please don't give me crap about cutting up and modifying a relatively rare square body Chevy. And as for what I'm doing with a lot of these old parts, I'm still saving quite a few of them just for spare parts and different things, or just stuff that you don't want to throw away because they're still decent. But I did throw a lot of it away. It's actually sitting in a pile outside the garage as a scrap pile, hoping somebody wants it for a couple bucks, but I'm not selling it. They can have it to scrap it, but if not, it'll just get tossed in the garbage can. But I am saving like the front drive shaft. I'm gonna save that. I'll maybe try to get that rebuilt and then use it as a spare if it's the right length, or I can modify it too if I have to. Saving some of these like spring frame brackets and stuff. You know, stuff might be handy to somebody someday, or for myself. So we'll save some of that stuff for now. And we're gonna save this monster rear drive shaft too. That could be handy for something later on down the road. I'm also saving like these Dana 60, the steering arm and the passenger side cap, because those are, you know, Dana 60s are kind of rare and hard to find, so might need one of those someday, you never know. I'd also been saving a lot of other junk too, like those are the headlights and the intake from the Corvette that I've replaced. That's the intake off of the Ram, so I'm kind of hanging on to some of that stuff just in case. Now for the new parts, the good stuff. So I got all the stuff laid out here. I'll give you a nice close-up of that. I also have a PSC power steering pump and all my new hoses over that, but we're gonna save that for another video. So let's get down here. So I mentioned on the last video that I was gonna do the Holley Sniper EFI fuel tank for K5 Blazer, and that's what we got. Now I'll be real with you right now. I bought this Holley Sniper EFI tank hoping the quality was gonna be a little bit better, because there's actually another company out there, I forgot what it was called. It was like fuel injection specialties, I don't know, I forget what it was called, but they kind of allowed you to pick their tank, their fuel pump, their sender, and you kind of make your own kit together of what you need. But then I had noticed that they had an option just to buy the Holley setup. So I figured the Holley setup is actually completely different, and it has like, you know, maybe it's better quality or something, and it was $120 more, you know. So I was like, well, okay, I'll just go on Summit Racing and buy the Holley setup, and just to be safe. But now I got the Holley setup, and I'm pretty sure it's identical to this other company. So if you run across this other company and you're trying to do the same thing, knowing now, I would have saved a few bucks and bought the other company. Mainly because the fuel tank is like a Tanks Inc. that's coming from Holley Sniper. The fuel pump is a TI brand, which is not their brand. You know, there's no actual like Holley branded stuff in this kit, so they're just rebadging it and putting their name on, barely even putting it on the box. I don't think they put it on the box, they're just selling you the kit. And they have their own part number, that's basically all they get. Oh, and they got instructions, they got their instructions, so. But this is what I got. And I noticed the that other company actually came with, I think it came with like fuel line and some other things that this kit did not come with, so just keep that in mind. But this is what we got, so this is what we're sticking with. So the Holley setup is basically this tank with all these parts on top, and it comes with the 2 straps, and that's it. So the main thing that's special about an actual electronic fuel injection tank is you just need an extra hole to be able to run your fuel pump out of. So basically my fuel pump runs out of here, my fuel level sender runs out of here, and then your filler is on that one. And these are nice because they actually run the threaded inserts. They don't have that stupid twist lock setup that, you know, the factory stuff uses. So this is a lot more easier to work on and manageable. So what we got is a fuel level sender, adjustable. So I actually have to set that up for this tank. This is the fuel pump. It's a TI Automotive Made in America pump. These are supposed to be pretty good, right up there with Walbro. And it comes with its whole, like, you know, unit to mount it in there with the return lines and everything, and the wiring and all the other stuff. And then this is our fuel filler assembly that will go right there. And it came with these fuel tank straps, which I'm gonna try to use on the install. I'm mounting this thing in an unconventional different way, so I'm gonna try to use those if I can. And then this is our hose. I think we got, geez, I think 40 feet here, I think is what I ordered. This is a push lock hose, so it should work with the fittings that I already have with the FI Tech. I would have preferred to get a real heavy, like abrasive resistant type stuff, like steel braided or something like that. But they just don't seem to make it with push lock and different things like that. So this is what we're gonna go for now. It is a good name brand, and it's actually supposed to be, oh, I saw it in there already. It's actually Parker hose, which I guess is really good stuff. It's a made in USA hose. It's got really high ratings and good temperatures and all that stuff. This is our fuel pump block off plate for the side of the engine block. So when we got rid of that mechanical pump, we'll just block it off with this. This is just a little Summit Racing kit. This is a zinc alloy. I don't know, it's kind of their cheaper one, but what more do you really need? And then this here, this is one of our old fuel filler necks. We're actually gonna have to reuse one of these. So I'm gonna have to clean this thing up, repaint it, make it look nice, and I'll show you where we're gonna mount that. And I think one of the only other things I need to buy besides some metal to mount this thing to the bed, I need to find a rubber hose to connect this filler neck to there. That's just basically, I need a length of it to kind of make it work, or otherwise this thing's gonna have to be mounted directly on there, and I don't know, I don't want to do that. Now looking at the back of this truck, a lot of people think that since I'm buying the K5 Blazer tank, I'm actually gonna mount it in the back like a K5 Blazer. A lot of people do that on these trucks, but I'm not gonna do that because I don't like how low it hangs. It's gonna hang down, you know, about here, and it's got to go way back here, almost to the back of the frame rail. So I just don't want to risk having that fuel tank hanging out under the back of this truck, because you know, with how long this truck is, the back of this thing is going to spend a lot of time on rocks and different things. And I don't want to worry about having to build a skid plate that's heavy and big enough to make it all work. So we're not putting it under here. What we're going to do is we're just going to mount it right on top of the floor up against the cab there. So it's going to take up a fairly large section of the bed here, but this bed's not a work truck anymore. I'm not using it to haul things. These springs can't even haul weight because they're so soft. So I need to come up with a way. I've kind of got a plan in my head to kind of build a metal frame that the tank will sit on. And I'm going to try and use the straps that it comes with to actually go over the top of the tank instead of underneath like it would in the factory. And one thing that kind of sucked is I was originally planning on using these straps like kind of in a factory location towards the middle. But I can't because the tank raises here. There's no good place to actually run the strap across without getting all cattywampus on everything. So I think what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna run the straps all the way on the outside edge. It's not the most ideal spot, but if we make it strong enough on the ends and everything, I think it's gonna work out just fine. Forgot to mention that it obviously comes with the gaskets for all these little units to get mounted to the tank. Comes with all the screws, and then it comes with a little rollover valve, which is actually kind of nice. Now once I get this tank mounted in here for fuel filling purposes, I think what we're actually gonna do is we're gonna mount this fuel filler kind of up in the corner here. I don't know how high I'll go above the bed. I might even keep it below the bed so you don't even see it. But it's gonna be mounted up in the corner here somewhere, probably on the passenger side. I can flip the tank around and do it on the driver's side. I think I kind of like the driver's side better, but we'll see how it goes. I'm just kind of plugging away at kind of getting things ready to go here and whatnot, and pulled the air cover off, the air cleaner. And I don't think you guys, I haven't really showed you guys this part. This is the FI Tech fuel injection right there. You can see it's a nice little 4-barrel unit. It's got the fuel injectors built into a unit, kind of like the old TBI units that, you know, came factory on, you know, 80s and 90s trucks. But anyways, pulled that off because I got to redo my fuel lines on the back. It's got 2 lines, one up here, that's our supply, and that's our return. I didn't have a return on it before because it didn't need it with that fuel command unit that we're taking off. So now I put the fitting that actually came with the whole system years ago. Luckily I found that fitting. It was in my box of goodies. And so I put the fitting on here, so now I can attach my return line and I can put my fittings on and then direct the fuel lines over here. Something kind of interesting, so I was going through and originally I planned on reusing some of this line that came with the original unit because it's this really nice, see if it'll zoom in on it, it probably won't. It's kind of like it's like a reinforced outer material. It's got this like hard fabric material on the outside. It seems real nice, right? And I assumed it was some really expensive hose that came with it. It only came with like 5 feet with the original kit. And I don't know what they used, what their manufacturer was or whatnot, but trying to get this thing to focus in, geez. But I noticed the ends were starting to split. That's right where it was on the fitting, you know, that outer coating was starting to split apart, so that's no bueno. The inner looks pretty good, but just the outer just looked like horrible. Even on the kind of like the middle of the hose when I was bending it out. When I would bend it out, I noticed it had a lot of cracks and stuff in it. So this stuff is kind of kind of crappy, so I'm not going to use any of that. I'll just use my new stuff and see how long that lasts. Here we got our fittings removed from that old hose and whatnot, so we can reuse these. This is just push lock, I guess. I'm a little skeptical of it, but this is the type of stuff that it's got a real gnarly barb on there. You just push it on, doesn't need a clamp or anything, so we'll see how it holds up. Worst case scenario, if for some reason it can't hold on to 58 psi that this pump's put out, then I'll you know, put hose clamps on or whatever. But it's cleaner when it doesn't have hose clamps, so we're gonna go with that. Next thing I want to check out is this fuel filter. This is the FI Tech unit that came with it, and I just want to see what's inside. This filter should be pretty clean because it had a filter that actually went before it, which was actually one of these just parts house units there. But I want to see what's in here before I put it back in, just to make sure it's clean. Woo! Wasn't expecting all that. Okay, so that's what's in here. Doesn't look too bad though. So it flows from the bottom up, just so you can kind of see how it's looking, but you can see it's pretty clean looking. I'll blast it out with some brake clean just to make sure, but that's interesting. I didn't know it was that weird coppery material with a spring like that. Try and give it a little back flush. That tasted good. We'll stick her back in. We got to start putting this tank together. I got to start just putting the sender in, the pump in, and the filler neck on. So let's just assemble everything. All the components that come with this tank are all like universal parts. So I actually have to go through and adjust everything to fit this tank, because it's universal for like how deep your tank is and different things like that. So I actually have to go through and adjust the length of this, you know, sender, and then I actually have to adjust the length of this rod where it needs to go. So I got a lot of little instructional things to do, but I'm not gonna bore you with all that. So let's just get this thing together. I just showed you installing the actual fuel sender into the tank there and how to put that together just real quickly. Nothing crazy, just measure, cut, blah blah blah, work on the instructions and follow them, and it's easy to go. I also just did the fuel pump itself here. Same thing, lots of instructions, just follow them real close, make your cuts, measure closely, you know, measure twice, cut once. But yeah, we're ready to drop this thing into the tank, and then we're almost done with putting this tank together. Give you a little close-up of the pump itself, because hopefully we'll never see this thing again. But that's the part on top that's got your supply and your return. And then what we had to do down here, once it focuses in, is this is our supply line. We had to cut that down to length, and then we also cut the return line down an inch less than this whole height. So I've already kind of test fitted in there. It seems to work perfect. Plus we got a little more room with the gasket, so everything looks like it's working great. And we also had to add this little foam sleeve around the pump itself to kind of, I don't know, insulate it or protect it or something. Zip tie it onto the return line. We add the sock in there, which is actually like a filter. And this thing's ready to go. And we are all together, looking good. Look at that, we got our level sender, we got our fuel pump, and we got our fuel neck on. So everything looks good. And then I just threw the straps that come with it over the top just to kind of get an idea of what it's gonna look like. It's gonna look pretty good, not too bad. One thing I forgot to show earlier was I forgot to put the wiring on the fuel pump itself. So I had actually put it in and I had it all bolted down, and I looked over and I saw the wire sitting on the bench over there. I'm like, oh no. So I had to pull this. I don't know how much more I can do tonight. Besides, I can run the wires from the throttle body unit all the way down and into the bed. I can do that. I don't think it's gonna take too long. Might do that before I go to bed here, but yeah, I don't have anything else. I need to buy metal to build my frame that this tank is gonna sit on. I need to figure out how I'm gonna actually attach the tank to the frame and the bed and all this stuff. I kind of have some ideas in my head, but it's kind of gonna determine on what kind of metal I can find. I'm not gonna go to a straight metal supply store. I'm just gonna be hitting up like the Ace, no, we don't have Ace Hardware, our Big R hardware store. I got Lowe's or Napa. They all have like bulk metal. So I'll have to see what they have and what I can put together and weld. I'm gonna have to be welding again. And then I have a few other things I gotta figure out. I wanna find a nice, like a weather pack connector to put on this fuel pump so I can actually disconnect it if I need to, so it's not just completely but connected in and can never get the thing off if I really need to. I don't want it to cut wires if I have to take it all the way off of the truck. I don't have a hose for the fuel filler to run up to where I want to go. I can set up something temporary for now. That's not that big of a deal. I guess I do have to figure out wiring still. I gotta finish wiring all this stuff in. I gotta run wires that are currently in the front of the truck to the back of the truck, so I don't know what kind of more wiring I need to buy and different things like that. But other than that, it's just buttoning it up. So, got to wake up in the morning, and I gotta try to get up early and see if I can get to the stores and find some materials to get this thing mounted down. I figured I better throw it in there just to see how it's gonna look, and that's pretty much it. That's where it's gonna be. I still got a lot of bed space. Everything's still very usable. Even have a lot of room on each side to utilize, so I'm really not worried about it taking up too much space in here, that's for sure. Now I'm gonna be trying to run the fuel filler up to the passenger side, up to the corner of the bed there, and then up the driver's side, I gotta put the rollover valve with the vent and everything. I'll put that up in the corner. So I think it'll come out pretty good. And then like I said, later on, if I wanna cover this thing up a little bit, I'll make like a metal box that would just basically cover the entire thing, and it would just be underneath a box, you know. Like clean things up a little bit more if I don't want it this exposed. And I figure if I make that metal box to cover it, it's probably a really good opportunity to finally learn how to TIG weld. I've got the welder. I've never TIG welded before, so it's a good chance to learn, teach myself how to do it. I'll buy some nice aluminum, you know, maybe like a diamond plate or something, and then I'll weld up like a big aluminum box to put over that fuel tank. Almost forgot, another thing I'm gonna have to buy is adapters that go from those NPT fittings on the top of the fuel pump. Those fuel pump lines, those are NPT. I gotta convert those to a like an AN fitting, so I'll have to see if I can find those adapters. All right, it's a new day. God, I don't know how many days I've been going on this. This is a fairly basic project, and I'm just dragging this thing out. I got no motivation lately, and I'm so tired. I almost feel sick that I'm so tired. I don't understand why. But we're pushing through, and we keep trying to pick every other day or so to work on this thing that I get. So I went shopping yesterday. I went shopping yesterday. I picked up a little bit of steel to build this frame that I need to mount this tank down to. I've got a basic idea of how I'm gonna do it. I wish I would have bought just a little bit more, but I'm gonna use what I have, and I think it'll turn out pretty good. Couldn't find the fuel fittings I needed for the senders. I'm gonna have to order those online. couldn't find a nice little 2-wire connector for the fuel pump, so I might just end up butt connecting that together for now until I find something that'll work. But other than that, I mean, we got just about everything we need, I think. There's a few other little things I still gotta buy, but yeah, we're gonna end up dragging this out for another week, I'm sure. So just to give you an idea of what I'm gonna be doing, I got this angle iron going across here. These are 1-inch square tubings, and so the tank's gonna sit on these square tubings. I'll cut them off flush with this angle iron. That angle iron will be flush with the sides, and so I think I'm gonna build basically like a retainer all the way around the bottom of the tank. That'll kind of help keep things placed in center, and then the straps will come down and hold it down. So I think it'll work. I think I can make it look pretty decent, so let's get to it. This is the point where I wish I had a couple more tools. I need a good little like chop saw for cutting metal straight and stuff like that would be real handy right now, but we're just gonna make do with what we got around here, and yeah, let's get it on. Alright, we've gone through and cut down everything that we need to do before we weld it all together. You can see I got it just kind of mocked up in place here. I put a bunch of weight on top of the tank because I'm trying to get the bottom to kind of flatten out a little bit because it has a slight concave to it. But I think the way we're sitting right now, it's looking pretty good. I had almost everything perfect, and then I was kind of checking everything at the end, trying to make sure everything's fitting right. And so I decided to trim my front piece down just a hair more. Well, that wasn't the measurement that it was off. It was actually the one in the back. So I ended up a little short, but we're still okay. I'm just trying to leave a little bit of a gap all the way around because I got some bicycle inner tube that I'm gonna use for a rubber isolator wherever it touches. So I was trying to leave a little bit of a gap for that, but I think we took away the gap on the sides, but it's okay. It'll still work fine. Everything's perfect. We'll make it work. It's still good. All my pieces still fit up tight. Well, it's kind of hard to see because it's dark under there. You can see I ended up with a gap in the middle here. I'll fill that in with another piece. This is where I kind of ended up just a hair short on metal, but this is up against the cab anyway, so you're not going to see anything back here. But yeah, I think it's going to come out pretty good. I got to take this tank off now and kind of square everything up perfectly and start tacking it all together. You can kind of see what we got going on here now, so it looks pretty good. Like I said, I messed up and don't have a piece to fill that in. I'll put something else across that. All right, now the fun part. We got to weld this thing together. I'm not that good of a welder, so go easy on me. I'm gonna try and take it easy on this, and hopefully I don't burn through because that square tubing's a little thin, but let's see what happens. Alright, we got the perimeter piece done all the way around. Not horrible welds. I've done worse, but I can live with that. Them inside corners are pretty hard to get into. I clamped this flat piece on just because everything was pulling in as I welded, so like everything's kind of warped right now, so hopefully it'll all kind of figure itself out here in the end. I haven't welded the two bottom pieces on yet because I wanted to make sure they're going to match up good in the bed and on the fuel tank. So I think we are good. I just measured it 14 inches apart, but I'm kind of just letting this thing cool down for a minute before I kind of start messing with it a little bit more. Always pay attention to what you're doing when you're grinding metal, because you catch things on fire. That didn't work very well. That's why I don't like having all this mess crammed in here and all this extra junk on my workbench, because when you start grinding and you're not paying attention, it's really easy for something to catch on fire. And I'm not trying to burn my house down or anything. What I really need to do out here is I need to get a shed. I need to get a shed outside. I need to get my concrete poured outside so I can move half of this stuff that's in this garage out there. I can get it out of here, and then I can organize a little better and keep my workbench cleaner, get some maybe finish doing my organizational stuff up here so I can get things like off the bench. So the last section is just to weld on the two bottom pieces for now, 14 inches apart. That matches everything I need to do, so I kind of got that set up right now. So we're gonna tack that in real quick. Bottom things on. We kind of set it in place here to see how I want to mount this thing down to the bed. I think what I've come up with is I'm actually going to drill big holes, probably just 4 of them, through those pieces, but I have to go all the way through because I can't have the bolts sticking up because the fuel tank's sitting on that. So I'll build big holes on top and then small holes on the bottom so that our bolts will sink down through it. I think that's a good idea. Well, unfortunately, this is as much as I can do tonight. I'm gonna have to continue on next weekend, but we're gonna tie all these videos together because I don't wanna make multiple videos on this one stupid little project. But this is where we're at. This thing actually looks pretty good. It's very lightweight, it's very strong. My welds aren't horrible, I've done worse, so that's cool. All we got left right now is I need to drill the holes through, but I don't have any nuts and bolts for that to do, so I don't wanna drill holes just quite yet until I have the bolts ready to go, just so I know what size I'm going to. And then once I get those holes drilled, I can paint the whole thing. I need to get some paint on it, get it all looking nice. Then we can drill it to the floor, mount it down, and that part will be completely done. And then after that, it's put the tank on and figure out how we're gonna use these fuel tank straps that come with it. And that's these right here. I'm gonna try and use these just to kind of keep a, I don't know, like a factory look, and it'll be clean, hopefully. So we'll see how that goes. So this past week I ended up ordering a bunch of small stuff that I still needed. So one thing was like I needed a new gallon of Evapor Rust. That's good for, you know, getting rust off the small parts. You can just put it in a container and just let it sit for, you know, an hour or two or overnight or whatever you need to do, and then just clean it off and whatever. So that's gonna be really helpful here coming in the future. I'm gonna try and use that on this rusty fill neck. I'm just gonna try and clean off all the built up dirt and stuff first, and then we'll soak that overnight, and then tomorrow hopefully I'll be able to put some paint on that thing. We also ended up buying just a bunch of regular like hose clamps that I needed. Yeah, these are fancy Cams branded ones, but they look a little better than the cheap worm gear type clamp, even though it is still a worm gear clamp. But whatever, it's what I found. And then we got a couple of adapters that we needed to get our fuel line attached to the new fuel pump sender. Finally found a nice waterproof 2-wire connector, so we'll use that on the on the fuel pump so that we can be able to disconnect it if anything ever happens in the future. Picked up a bunch of these nice kind of rubber coated P-clamps is what I call them. They're P-clamps. That's, I don't know, that's what the aeromotive industry calls them. But these actually weren't too expensive. I think a pack of 10 was $10 or something. So, okay, there it goes. That was pretty sweet. It actually took a long time to find just a fuel filler neck for this thing because I'm trying to kind of relocate things on the fuel filler itself. And apparently these square bodies use kind of an unconventional size. So this is 1 3/4 inch fuel filler. It's a universal piece. It's made by Daco. So if you guys need to find something that works into a different location, it's not super flexible, but I think it'll be just flexible enough to make it work. And then the other hard thing to find was actually the vent for the fueler neck. And this is 5/8 fuel hose, which is, you know, obviously extremely big for just fuel hose. It's not fuel injection hose, but it just needs to withstand fuel. It doesn't need to withstand pressure. But yeah, that's the small guy that runs off the side of your fuel filler neck for venting so you can fill it up. But other than that, I got you know, I ended up just buying some spray adhesive because I got to glue this rubber bicycle inner tube rubber to the mounting and all that stuff. You'll see that later. I think I bought this last week, don't remember if I pointed it out, just some primer for paint and stuff. So tonight I'm gonna try and get that cleaned up, get it probably put into the rust stuff, and then tomorrow I can paint it. And then I think I'm gonna try and drill some holes. Oh yeah, I ended up buying hardware. Just a bunch of 5/16 nuts and bolts to mount my fuel tank frame to the bed. So I want to try and get the holes drilled for that frame so I can start painting it tomorrow, maybe tonight. I don't know, we'll see. Come on now. Kind of what it looks like before. You can see it's not horrible. Is it even focusing in? But there's some fairly heavy rust there, so we're just gonna drop it in that bucket and see what. So while we wait for rust removal to happen, we're going to climb up here into the bed. It's about 15 feet up into the air, I feel like. But we want to drill some holes into this little framework that I got underneath this fuel tank and try and get things placed where I need to be. And then, yeah, we'll put some placement holes, just some little pilot holes all the way through. And then we'll drill the bigger holes off of the truck there. And then, yeah, we'll be good there. Once I get those holes drilled, then I can actually paint this thing, which is kind of my goal. So I can wake up tomorrow and kind of get things set up and start painting. So there's no real science to this part of it. I'm just gonna eyeball it, center it up. I'm trying to make sure it's kind of just sitting on these raised ribs where I want it to. And then I'm just gonna run my long drill bit all the way through 4 locations, maybe 6. I don't know, we'll see how the mounting locations look. And then we'll be pretty much good. Really, the only thing I'm actually worried about is how much gap I have on the bed here, which is really not critical, but I just want to make sure there's enough gap that it's not going to be hitting things or whatnot. And so I will pull it out a little bit, leave a couple inches back there. I think is a good idea. And then, yeah, I mean, that looks good. So we just lift the tank off, set it up here. And we can kind of look at our frame here and see where we're sitting, make sure we're kind of right about where I want it to be, and it's actually not too bad. Center it up there. Well, use the calibrated eyeballs, and I think that's about it. I did previously mark locations on these, so I'm just going to do the 4, kind of where I want them so that they're not hitting any of the supports underneath the bed on the bottom side. I already measured that out, so we're just going to do here. I kind of measured them out evenly so they look copacetic, and then we'll be good to go. Jeez. Triangle straight. So we took this back out of the truck now so we can kind of drill it up on the stand here. So my plan is, where I did these little pilot holes, is what we need to do is I can't have these bolts actually sitting above the surface because the fuel tank's sitting there. So I'm going to drill a really big hole on top so that this washer and this bolt can drop all the way through to the lower section, and then the bolt and washer will actually be sitting down below. So I just need to drill a hole big enough that this washer can be dropped through. But then obviously the bottom side, we want a smaller hole. All we want is the size of the bolt. So that's what we're doing. All cleaned up, degreased and sprayed down brake clean and soaked in alcohol, and yeah, minimal work on my part. So yeah, using that evapor rust is pretty good stuff. It's very pitted through here, but that's expected. If you really wanted it even better, like if you're doing like Barrett Jackson, then you're gonna be like sandblasting and then doing this process also. But no, that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Time for paint. In case you ever wonder what it's like living with a deaf cat, so she's sleeping on something I need, all my instruction manuals and stuff. I need my my Dakota digital instruction manuals because I got to figure out how to where I ran the wiring and everything for the fuel gauge, you know. So I need that, and obviously she's sleeping on it, and you know, you can just sit here and talk and talk and talk, and she doesn't wake up because she doesn't hear you. Oh, she finally heard me. Normally she doesn't even do that much. But yeah, so now I need my instructions. Can I have my instructions? I need stuff. I need things. I need the things that are under here. She just doesn't care. Usually I just kind of feel bad and I have to give her a treat after doing something like that. So I needed my instructions because I got to figure out about my fuel gauge and the sender wire and all that stuff. I just kind of try and remember where I'm at on that. I know I did some things a little unconventional on this when I first put these gauges in, so I just got to kind of figure that out again. So I have all my instructions here. Luckily, this is why I keep everything. I'm fairly organized when it comes to this type of stuff. So these are the gauges that I put in this truck many years ago. These are the Dakota Digital VHX. These are actually the cheaper gauges that they have, and I actually liked the cheaper ones because they were more basic. I didn't need all the fancy stuff. I didn't want the bigger LCD screen and stuff on the gauges themselves. I liked the smaller ones because I liked the more plain factory look on this truck. And these are those gauges. As you can see, they look pretty good. I think there's a green reflection coming off from behind me somewhere, but they're not actually green. They're just black and white, and that's what I liked. They're very plain, very factory looking gauge. The only thing I wish is like they had the full, like, I don't know, what do they call the full sweep gauges? Not 360, but 180, I don't know, whatever it is. These just kind of have the partial sweep, which is fine. They look great, and I'm okay with that. And the LCD screen down here is very small compared to the more expensive gauges. I forget which ones of those are called, but they have this big old screen on here, and to me it was just kind of a turn-off, and I didn't want the sporty looking numbers and stuff like that. I just wanted the more clean factory look, you know, just kind of fits the truck more in my opinion. So the wiring shouldn't be too bad. I've already ran the power wire for my pump from this front corner all the way to the back. I kind of rerouted it so it comes off of the main motor wiring harness and stuff like that just to clean things up. That was no big deal. It's sitting back there ready to be hooked up. And then as for the fuel gauge, I got to figure out where tied in. I think the only weird thing is I just got to find, I think I'm just going to tie into the factory location in the back. But you know, this truck had dual tanks. So it had a switch that would have switched even the sender signal to the left or right tank. So I got to find that, get rid of that whole setup, and then find just the actual signal wire straight to the gauge. And if I remember right, the Dakota Digital wanted me to run a ground wire directly from their gauges to the sender, which I did not do. I ended up just grounding it under the dash or something like that. So we'll do the correct ground on that here and fix that and whatnot and make that all right. So I'm digging into the fuel tank sender, level sender, blah, blah, blah deal, and I just wanted to get a little video on this as I do it. I pulled apart some stuff. This is the Dakota Digital gauges. That's pretty simple. I like these because, I mean, there's nothing that really attaches to the gauges themselves besides a, like, what do they call it, a Cat5 cable, just a communication cable. And then that all runs into this box down here, and this box is where you connect all your senders and sensors and wires and different things like that. So it's kind of a good little system. I like that. I was hoping not to have to tear all this apart, you know. I got the nice bezel pulled apart and all this stuff. Luckily all my stuff's in pretty good shape. I did notice the gauges themselves, they have this bracket bolted onto the side. It's plastic, it's a 3D printed part. It had broke off. I remember when I put this thing in, it was under a lot of tension to put it in and get the screws in and stuff like that. So the parts, I guess, ended up breaking under tension. Whatever. I can probably, it just kind of bolts onto the top side here with 2 screws. I can probably rebuild just this little section here with a little sheet metal piece if I really want to. We'll see how I feel when I put this back together. But I noticed I still had all my old wiring stuff when I was going through installing this. I labeled everything as I was pulling it apart and kind of figuring things out. And you know, this is the factory electrical connector underneath there, and that's all the factory stuff there that we didn't really use. And this is everything we got. So you know, it's all labeled nice where our connections go in and stuff like that. Up right at the top corner here is my fuel sender and all that stuff. So I have my pink wire for the gauge, you know, it goes straight to the fuel sender basically. And I'm kind of confused because the fuel negative doesn't have anything going to it right now, and I know the fuel gauges worked at one point on this. I know they stopped working, but yeah, I'm not sure what I did with the ground on that, so I'm gonna dig a little deeper on this and figure out what I did. She's hunting bugs. Alright, so I was reading through the instructions on this deal that came with my original gauges, and I figured out what I did. So it says that, you know, if you have existing wiring, you can run the existing sender wire on the harness as it is, but you just want to make sure that the sender on the fuel tanks are grounded to the frame, which they are from the factory. It's just kind of how it works. But it does give you the opportunity to run a extra ground wire, which is the extra spot. So since I got everything apart, it's really easy to run wires around this truck. I'm gonna run a ground wire from that control box to the sender, and then we know we will have a proper fuel level indication. Sorry for the strobing lights, but yeah, we got our ground wire hooked up here. So I already ran that all the way to the back. It was pretty easy. So yep. So I was trying to figure out the actual power wire sender to the fuel gauge, and I think we're just gonna run a whole new wire for that too, because I was trying to trace it and it's just going too many places. So we're gonna have a direct wire from the basically gauge all the way back to the fuel tank. So basically, like, what it's trying to do right now is it's going from like the stock gauges, and then it's going to the switch, and then out of the switch it goes all the way under the truck, which goes to the fuel tank selector switch for the left and right tanks. And then from there, I think that tank switch, I think, is what switches it over from, you know, the signal from the left or the right tank. And obviously we're not using any of that stuff. We don't have left and right tanks anymore. We're not using that fuel sender switch deal anymore. We're not doing any of that. So for me to use this, I would have to like splice here to bypass that switch, and I have to splice down below to bypass it, and it's getting too confusing. So we're not going to do that anymore. So I'm going to run a wire directly from our new gauges straight to the new tank. It'll run right next to the ground wire, so it'll have dedicated wires for the fuel level sender of the tank straight to the gauges, and we'll be happy. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then we're going to hopefully call this wiring done. Let me turn Mike off on the TV real quick. Alright, so we got everything ran. I got my wiring cleaned up. You can see I was just hacking on stuff. I cut so many zip ties and replaced so many zip ties, and like I got connectors I cut out. I don't need that stuff, so I was pulling just everything out. Some more wiring harnesses I don't need. I don't need half the stuff on this truck anymore. So I got brand new power and negative running to the fuel sender gauge and all that good stuff, so we are good to go. I even pulled out, like, I was trying to figure out my fuel selector switch and all that stuff, so eventually I'll delete all that wiring as well. But it's pretty easy. You just come out the firewall, run along the frame, do its thing, run along here, and then go back up on the bed there. It's no big deal at all. And that's just what we're left. I got the 2 rolls of wire still hooked up, so I can adjust the length as much as I need. And then I got my 1 extra long wire sitting over there for the fuel pump. So yeah, I mean, this is pretty much it for wiring. Once I get the tank in, then I just gotta terminate those 3 wires, and then I'll run an extra ground wire from the pump itself down to the frame, which will be, you know, like 3 feet of wire, no big deal. And then we'll be done. She saw 1 bug over there 2 weeks ago, and now she's just fascinated by that spot. Painting is complete, finally. It took me over a day because the stuff kind of dries slow and I didn't want to mess with it. And 1 spot got messed up, so I got to sand a couple spots down and repaint, but we're finally done. It's good. It's good to be bolted down, but before I bolt it down, I've actually been cutting up this bicycle inner tube stuff. Okay, it's a bicycle inner tube to basically put over all the surfaces the tank's going to be contacting, just so we don't, you know, rub through the paint or have squeaks and different things like that. Bicycle inner tube works pretty good, I think. And the other thing we had painted was the fuel filler neck here. It's all done, ready to go. Looks pretty good. And I even cleaned up the old gas cap. It almost looks brand new. Where's the focus at? Here you go. Thing looks good now. It used to be all crusty and had like mold and moss growing all over it and whatnot. It looked really old, but we got it cleaned up and it's working good now. Just a heads up, if anybody else is trying to do stuff like this, you notice my paint is actually peeling and curling up. So that adhesive I'm using, which is the Loctite spray adhesive, is actually reacting with the paint that I sprayed on. Now this paint is not fully cured, so that is probably something to do with it. This paint has been on there for maybe 4 hours. This paint needs a full 24 hours, like a full cure, so that's probably my bad. Just something to keep an eye out. We're gonna push through anyways. And this is our finished product. I got all the rubber glued down on all the contact areas. I am not completely satisfied with this. It's real messy looking. It's real hard to work with this rubber. You can't cut it very well. Razor blades don't cut it. You know, it's just awkward stuff to work with. So if you're trying to make something nice, I don't recommend using the bicycle inner tubes. But functional, it should work. It is now bolted down to the bed with its 4 mounting locations. Doesn't look horrible, right? So the next thing I have to figure out is I want to use these straps to hold the tank down. So I got to figure out how I'm going to attach it up here, which should be very basic. I'm probably looking at how close I am to everything here. I might cut this stud down to the bare minimum so just the nut fits on it. And then that'll fit right up here, and I'll have to build some sort of little bracket or something up there. And then I'm hoping the strap will do its little natural bend and go down hopefully right through the bed floor and actually use the bed floor to retain it. So we're gonna have to see how this all works out. Hey, we're back again. I have no idea what weekend I'm on now. This is what, my 4th weekend working on this project? Holy cow, it's taken for a while. As you can see, I've hammered out the last 2 days of just no camera work and just trying to get some stuff done. So we got the tank in, as you can tell behind me. I'll give you a close-up look at that. And then we're also gonna start building our brackets for the fuel filler neck to mount to. So this is what we did with the tank. It is all mounted and finished. So you can see the frame that we built earlier is now down. It's been painted, it's finished, it's been bolted down to the bed. Fuel tank is mounted. The straps are done. For the straps, I just had to modify the end lengths of the threaded portions, and I know it's kind of dark in there right now, but there's just an angle iron basically welded to the face of the bed there. And it goes through and it's nutted from the inside. It's a little hard to get that nut on in there, so I might modify something later if I find myself having to take this fuel tank in and out for any reason. And then the back side, we had to lengthen the threaded section, so it's actually got a solid section on there, then the threads start down lower, and it just goes straight through the bed floor, and it's got a nut and a washer on the bottom side. It's real simple. So I know it's all mounted to just sheet metal, but it's in multiple locations and the load is spread out real wide, so I think we'll be fine. If not, I can strengthen things, or I can completely redesign it if I don't like it later. But I think it looks pretty clean. It looks decent. You can see I ran all the plumbing is all done, except for, I forgot I still got to run my vent hose off the center there, so that'll just run there. I think I'm going to run that one to the driver's side, maybe passenger side, I'm not sure, but the fuel filler is going to be on this side too. And the wiring's all done and complete. Everything is done underneath the truck. Fuel hose is all mounted up there with P-clamps and lots of zip ties to support it all. Fuel line's coming up the firewall. It's mounted there with the filter, and then it goes straight into the unit. So I really like this because it keeps it way away from the exhaust. Not like before, I was running along the header right next to the exhaust, so the fuel should stay a little cooler hopefully. Our fuel filter is easily accessible if there's ever any issues. And I might actually add a fuel gauge up there someday too, just so I can see my pressure if there's ever an issue. At least you can quickly verify if you have fuel pressure. But it looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. So we're doing a little CAD work here, cardboard aided design. So I've cut out a piece of cardboard in the shape of the bracket that I want to run. And basically this is my fuel filler. This bracket is just going to slide up from underneath. It's going to go like that, and it's going to bolt in. So you can see it's going to be real basic. And then once it's bolted like that, this will actually bolt to the inside of the bed rail right there, and that's what we'll run. Now if this material I have, the actual metal is a little too flimsy, which I don't think it will be, but if it is, it'll be easy enough to add a piece over the top and I can strengthen it up, or I can add something along the back side to strengthen it up. It'll be no problem. Yeah, if you can't tell, I've already traced it out here on my metal. I don't know what thickness is, 1/8 inch I think. Decent. And I had to do it in 2 pieces because this piece of metal just isn't quite big enough. So I traced it out like that and like that, and then we'll cut those 2 pieces out, and then we'll just weld them together there and there and make one piece. Won't even be able to tell. Another weekend and more work done. This video is gonna be a mess. So it's basically my Friday we're Saturday, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, my first day off of the weekend. And I went through and I actually finished everything I need to do. This truck is done. All I gotta do is put fuel in it. So let me show you where we're at. So this is it. This is everything. I'm done. I don't want to do anything more. This is basically what I envisioned doing, short of doing like a super nice fuel cell and some other custom stuff. So this is like mid-grade fuel system to me. I like it though. I think it's actually very functional and I think it's gonna work really good. So what we did with our fuel filler is it's just up here. So our fuel filler is just above the bed now. It'll be easy to fill up, easy to get to. I can't go, I mean, if I wanted to get crazy, I could cut it through there, mount something, but I just don't care. It looks good up there. My bracket turned out pretty good. It's pretty rigid. And then installed all of our hoses and all our plumbing is completely done at this point. And then in the far corner there, if it zooms in, you'll notice I got my vent ran up into the corner of the bed there, kind of under the cover, so it's a little protected, and that just runs back to the fuel tank. So like, everything's done. That's it. Pretty sure I already showed how I attach the straps and all that stuff. And hey, if this works out great, then it'll just stay there as is. And if it doesn't work very good, then I can modify it because it's right there. It's super easy to change. But I don't think having the fuel filler up above the bed there is anything obnoxious or anything. It's not like super crazy obvious or anything. So I think it works out pretty good. And then once we have the tailgate up here, most people won't even be able to see this because, I mean, I'm 6'2" or 6'3" and I can barely look over the bed of this thing. And I definitely accomplished one aspect of this I wanted, which was to actually have everything super easy to work on, because if I'm gonna be beating this thing up and out wheeling and doing stuff and things break, I want to be able to fix things super easy. So like, you know, the fuel sender, which obviously that's not super important, but I can easily get to that. The fuel pump, which could be important because, you know, it seems like everybody has fuel pump issues these days, is super easy to get to. I just got to get up in the bed, unbolt it, and I can lift that fuel pump right out and swap it. I ended up adding a bunch of extra fuel line. I coiled a good length of it behind the tank there, so I have extra line kind of there if for some reason I had to lengthen my line, like cut out a bad section or something. So that's kind of cool, little thinking ahead there. Probably the thing I don't like the most about this right now is actually this fuel filler hose itself. It's real stiff and it's hard to, it doesn't want to bend very tight, and I'm kind of in a tight spot here for it, so it kind of kinks a little bit. I don't know if you can even tell. It probably looks good on camera, but it's got some kinky spots to it, like right here, but it should be plenty for the fuel to flow through. As long as it fills up and whatnot, then I am completely happy. And then hopefully my fuel vent is in a good spot to where, like, if I get really off camber, like I'm not dumping fuel, you know, out of the vent or anything like that. But it does have the rollover valve inside of it, so technically the little ball valve should block any flow that wants to come out of that thing. But yeah, I'm happy. So like, it's way more simple than it was before. So I just got two basically hoses running to the front of the truck. I got just a couple basic wires running where they need to go. Pretty sure I showed the wiring underneath the truck. It's all held up in P-clamps and fancy stuff, and it looks decent. And then all I have is two hoses coming up, one fuel filter, and it goes right to the fuel injection unit. So it's way more simple than this thing was before. Got rid of a lot of stuff out of this engine compartment. The only thing I want to add to this is probably like the fuel pressure gauge. I'll probably throw a gauge on it, but that'll be super easy to add later. I just need to get the T with the AN fittings and whatnot, and I'll put it right off the back there. And I'll probably just rob one of these gauges off of this old fuel command deal. I'll just rob one of those out of it and stick it on there, no big deal. I can add that later. Just looking at it from the other side here, obviously the fuel filler on that side with the vent hose going to it. And that is the factory fuel filler that used to go down in the bed. Just moved it up there with that little bracket I made. And then on this side, we have, you know, fuel lines that go through the bed and down to the framework and all that stuff. But I have one line, which is my vent line for the tank, which is actually that center hose. Probably can't tell from here. It's just basically an open hose. And I don't know if you can tell what I did here to make it work, but this used to be a piece of square tubing. I basically notched out the square tubing so that it just had one flat side that went boop, and then the back side that goes inside the pocket of the bed there, that's still a piece of square tubing, but I just drilled a big hole all the way through it to maintain the actual breather part of it there. It's real simple, and it looks like it works. And noticing that, man, I got those screws nice and level. I didn't even plan that. That was just with the impact gun. Good job. And like I mentioned earlier, I still got to put fuel in it, so I got 5 gallons of fresh fuel there. And these things are, I think one was full and one is almost full of older fuel. I don't know the quality of the fuel that's in these, so I'm gonna try and introduce it slowly into the truck, and then I don't know, maybe I'll see if anybody wants it local for lawnmowers and other unimportant things. But yeah, I gotta get rid of all this fuel. I don't live in the country. I can't just make it disappear like I used to. Wait, did I just say that? So yeah, the fuel system is done. All I gotta do is start it up. I don't know where I'm going from here on this video. I got a lot of stuff to do this weekend. I gotta wake up super early. I gotta screw up my sleep schedule tomorrow. I'm gonna try and hit up an estate sale and buy a small metal shed that these people have at their house, I guess. Let's see if I can get it for cheap. I'm about to buy one on Lowe's anyways, so I was like, well, let's see if I can get this nice little used one for, you know, I have no idea. I've never been to an estate sale. I don't even do garage sales. I have no idea what people price these things at, so we'll see. If it's nothing, then I'll have woken up super early for no reason. But yeah, I gotta see where we're going with this video. Hell yeah. I love these gas tanks. Great for the environment. On that note, we gotta call this video quits. I already edited up most of it, and this is an extremely long video, so sorry for that if you don't like that stuff. But if you're still watching, thank you. I really appreciate the support, and I will catch you next time.